Let's go to Judith Sloan, the contributing economics editor of The Australian, joining us live from Melbourne. Great to talk to you, Judith. Look, this appointment of Elon Musk to try and trim down the huge, vast bureaucracy in the US is one hell of a challenge, but it resonates with us here in Australia today as we read on the front page of The Australian today that the Albanese Labor government has increased the size of the federal bureaucracy by more than 26,000 people in less than 3 years. And half of those, more than half of those, are just Canberra-based, so they're not actually service delivery. Have you seen an expansion of bureaucracy as rapid as this in the past, and can it be at all beneficial to taxpayers?
Well, sadly, we have seen these kind of increases. It's sort of Labor government DNA to both increase the size of the public sector, the public servants, and to improve their wages too. And of course, you see this at the state government level. But as you point out, it's really important. These aren't, frontline workers. These aren't, teachers, nurses, police or anything. Of course, the federal government doesn't employ those people by and large. These are kind of, climate policy advisors and the like. These are media advisors in Prime Minister and Cabinet. So it's scary stuff. I mean, I think it's really exciting with, it's not just Elon Musk, but Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's a very interesting character. And you think of artificial intelligence. I mean, this could be something that will revolutionise the way that public services are delivered and the way public policy advice is offered up as well. So it's going to be a wild, wild ride. But the truth of the matter is that the alternative was looking pretty grim.
Well, this is the point, and you don't want to sound heartless and ruthless. When you talk about this sort of stuff, talk me through this, because you've watched it over various federal governments and state governments over many years. But to say we need to shrink our bureaucracy and public service doesn't mean sacking thousands of people. If you can just keep a cap on the numbers and allow it to reduce by natural attrition, it's amazing how quickly it drops as a share of government expenditure.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that was a mistake that Campbell Newman made, that he had all these targets about making public servants redundant. But in fact, if he just relied on the natural attrition, which is extraordinarily high, he could have actually made those targets without all the ballyhoo, I suppose. I mean, having said that, I think, this is really a time to be thinking through what the government does and doesn't do. I think one of Trump's initiative, this is going to be great for us. Chris, is going to be so much to write about and so much to talk about, but he's going to get rid of the federal Department of Education in the US. And I mean, our federal Department of Education, that doesn't run any schools. It doesn't employ any teachers. It's got literally thousands of public servants. And You really wonder what they do. So,
I had this discussion with my wife the other day, who's a former education bureaucrat. I said, just get rid of the federal education department. Let the states run competitive education systems. Let them try and outdo each other.
Exactly, and that's the value of competitive federalism, and that's particularly true in the US because you actually have competitive federalism within states because, they run at a sort of micro level with the local government, education funding arrangements. And so if you can improve your education system, people will flock to the schools. So I think it's pretty exciting stuff, to tell you the truth.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Now, there's big parallels when it comes to immigration as well between Australia and the US, and you've written about that this week as well, looking at what's happened in Europe, in the UK, in the US, and of course what's happened here in previous times. And you see really grim portents for us economically, but also for the government politically, because they can't get control of even constraining immigration to their own desired targets.
Well, you think about it, I mean, I'm sure that the illegal immigration was a big factor in the US election results, particularly if you think of Arizona and Nevada, but also in those sanctuary cities that have had to take the illegal migrants and had to basically, feed and water them and the like. There's quite a lot of resentment there. So they've had probably between about 7 and 8 million illegal migrants under the Biden administration, but we've had 500,000 in 2 years. Now, they're not illegal, but they are essentially uncapped. And that was the point I was making, that I think the electorate reacts badly to what you might see as surging migration and uncontrolled migration. And the thing is, we have these uncapped temporary visa categories, and essentially if people apply and they meet the criteria, then they will be granted those visas. And this has become a really big issue. So 500,000 a year, Chris, so think about that. That's like, nearly half the size of Adelaide every year. And prior to the pandemic, it was about 220,000 a year.
It's extraordinary.
So it's more than double. And, I mean, living in Melbourne, and I'm sure you find living in Sydney, it's just apparent, the pressure on these cities.
Absolutely. It's going to be a massive issue as we get close to the federal election. Thanks for joining us, Judith. I appreciate it. Judith Sloan there talking sense as ever.